South Korea's export and import figures for the first 10 days of June came out on Monday. Exports, in fact, rebounded to positive figures for the first time in 4 months. Now, can we see this as a good sign? To discuss, we're joined by Professor Yang Hee-dong this morning. Great to have you with us.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. South Korea recorded an on-year rise in exports during the first 10 days of this month. Now, what attributed to the rise, and can we expect exports for the rest of the month to stay on an upward trend?
Well, I should be more careful about this very, optimal and very positive the forecasting, because for the past 10 months, the trade deficit and export reduction has been maintained. Where in the early June, and it's very surprising that we have the positive increase of export. Well, there are many reasons behind this very positive turnover. The first one is, this year the semiconductor export, which is the largest export item, has reduced by over 36%. And our export to China has reduced over 28%. And these two problems has been somehow relaxed, in the early June. And besides, our export of automobiles and shipments have increased almost more than double, mostly to EU and to the United States. So all these issues have combined to come up with a positive turnover of our export, but it may be too early to forecast that our export in the remaining of this year will turn positive, because there are a couple of major reasons behind this pessimistic forecasting. The first reason is still there is a struggling international political relationship between China and the United States. The United States have urged Korea to reduce our export to China, which is the largest market for our semiconductor export. And the second reason is, well, the United States is the largest market for the automobile export, but still there is a legal risk in the U.S. market due to IRA, etc. So these two, the remaining risks may cause some very careful forecasting for our export performance in the remaining period of this year.
So you're saying the first 10 days of June figures are still, it's maybe too early to call it a good sign, because the chip exports, especially to China, are still sluggish.
Right.
Then during the first 10-day period, Professor, by sector, you earlier mentioned overseas shipments of chips went down over 30%. Now, why is that? Why are the Korean chips still seeing an export struggle? Is that because of the U.S.-China tension?
Yes, well, there are many reasons behind this very sluggish export of the chips to China. The first reason is there's just very strong pressure from the United States for Korean government to reduce our export, particularly for the equipments and for manufacturing efforts in Chinese market. So a lot of some of the Korean chip manufacturers plan to retreat from Chinese market and move their facilities to United States. But that is not a simple story. But there are also very significant reasons in terms of the economic turnovers. During the COVID-19, there's a huge increase of the demand for the ITs and mobile phones. But since last year, such a huge demand for the IT product has been reduced significantly. So there's a big fluctuations in demand for IT products, but supplies of IT products cannot be reduced and change that fast. So for the 2 or 3 years during COVID-19, the manufacturers of semiconductors have increased their product capacity, but they can reduce their production, the performances, according to the reduction in the demand. So all the time there has been this inventory surplus for the past 1.5 years. And it's not easy to reduce increase the inventory surplus in the very short period of time. That's the biggest reason for this sluggish performance of semiconductors. And China also has increased their capacity to replace their product equipment and the middle range of items through their internal production capacity. In other words, Chinese can have successfully replaced the export and import items with their internal manufacturing capacity. So all these reasons have combined for China to reduce their import from Korea for semiconductor items.
Right, and the U.S. allowing South Korean and Taiwanese chipmakers to continue their chip-making operations in China must be good news for South Korean companies, right?
Yeah, I mean, United States have declared that they will suspend their, what should I say, the grace period of the banning the exports of the semiconductor equipment to China, which is good news for us. But we should keep in mind that China is the largest market for Korean semiconductors. We export more than 32% of our systems semiconductors to China, and we export over the 43% of the memory semiconductor to China. So China is the largest market for our semiconductor export, and it's not easy to replace China's market with any other places in the world.
Right, definitely. Now, before we let you go, Professor Yang, imports, on the other hand, dropped over 20% on year, which led to a trade deficit of $1.4 billion. Now, that's a trade deficit for 15 straight months. Now, what does that mean? I mean, how long will this last for?
Well, yes, we are struggling with the trade deficit for the past 10 months. But you should keep in mind that the early 10 days in June, we had $1.4 billion. That is far smaller than the trade deficit during the same period of the last month. And for the past 15 months, we had the trade deficit. And the largest trade deficit was this January. We had more than $12.5 billion of the trade deficit. But deficit scale has been reduced continuously for the past 4 months. And this is why many people expect that we may recover our export and trade performance in the second half of this year. But as I already said, it's too early to develop such a very positive forecasting for the remaining period of this year.
Right, 50 months, straight months of trade deficit sounds a bit scary, but according to you, the scale and the volume itself have been scaled down.
Right. That's my point.
Right. All right, we appreciate your insight this morning, Professor Yang. Have a great day.
Thank you, too.